What's up, everyone? Tera Roberts here, and welcome into the Dear Miss Fantasy show with me, your host, Tera Roberts. This is the official Mailbag show for Player Profiler. It is Wednesday, August 20th. I was checking my mic to make sure the right one was connected. We're good to go here. And I am taking your questions live. And good news, great news. There is no massive torrential storm right now in Houston. So I'm not going to lose power in the middle of the show and ruin the experience for everyone. So yay, we're good to go. If you're listening on the podcast, that's why you didn't get a podcast last week, because it was a bad podcast that was interrupted several times by me trying to combat continuously losing power over and over and over again, because apparently we're back in, we've been in like a drought. No, like a drought. I don't know if that's official. We've been not getting as much rain as you would think during hurricane season in Houston. And apparently over the past week, they've decided to make up for it and just send massive rainfall, massive storms that knock out power every single day. So that's been cool. But we're good to go here. And we're going to dive right in because we've got breaking news here. Breaking news. Sky Moore traded to the 49ers right as I start the podcast here. So let's talk about it. I have done no preparation for that. Oh, by the way, this week's topic, ADP Risers and Fallers. It will be a good show, but let's talk about these trades that happened, because we got one right before that one as well of Devon Vele being traded to the Saints. But Sky Moore, Chiefs trading him to the 49ers there. And that's actually more interesting than you would think. First of all, it's interesting to us. I assume if you're watching or listening to this show, you are a degenerate, because you're tuning into me and I'm a degenerate too. And we must be like, we're basically kin, right? So we're deep in the weeds here. We're playing deep leagues. We play Dynasty. We love this. It's all good. Yeah. So Sky Moore to the 49ers. Big deal there is that technically speaking, he will get playtime because anyone and everyone is hurt for the 49ers right now. Then hey, that's why we've talked about it ad nauseum here. I love Ricky Pearsall. I love George Kittle. Those are my dudes that I am drafting like crazy, right? And and I just realized that I did not stream this to my Twitter. Let me do that real quick. Okay, good. Hopefully now this is going out to my Twitter. I just realized live that I did not actually select to even stream this to my own Twitter. That sucks, Tera. But I think we're good to go here. So if you're just tuning into the Twitter audience, I'm sorry. I forgot to include you on the live stream. Whoops, my bad here. But I added you in, so we should be here to go. Man, this is 2 weeks in a row, technical difficulties for me. I'm not on a good run here. Let's hope I flip this around before we head into the season, because we've got some fun things coming this season. I'll talk about it as we go on through the show. But the 49ers, injuries, right? Major here. And basically the only healthy receivers that they have at this point is literally just Ricky Pearsall and some rookie help as well. But my God, they're struggling there. So them trading for a receiver makes sense. Obviously, there's no super high profile guys other than Terry McLaurin that is available, but that doesn't make a lot of sense for them, considering them getting rid of Deebo Samuel, obviously. So trading for a low-end wide receiver makes a lot of sense. He will get playtime immediately. I actually low-key, and I didn't talk about this. I think I might have mentioned it somewhere. Low-key, because I've always been a Demarcus Robinson fan randomly. I will, anytime he pops up throughout the season, I will advise you jump on waivers and grab him, because when he's getting those targets, he's producing, and he is a red zone target and touchdown magnet. And so had the suspension not happened, but we knew that was coming, he got the DUI. It's an automatic 3. It's happening there. Maybe they were hoping they could delay it to happen later in the season when they get Ayuk back and scam and scheme the system. But those 3 games are coming right off the top there. Oddly enough, he would have for sure been the wide receiver 3 in that offense, assuming we get Juwan Jennings back. He's also dealing with an injury. We don't have a specific timeline on it, but it's expected that he should be available to start the season. It's just kind of because it was wrapped up in that weird contract situation as well, that the news has been a kind of like strange on that. But Sky Moore has the chance to immediately be the wide receiver 3 in that offense. So good for him, because it wasn't going to happen in the Chiefs offense. So maybe a fresh start. Fresh start with Kyle Shanahan is not usually the fresh start that you want to go, but hey, maybe he can make it work. He's a nice guy there. We also had Devon Vele traded to the Saints. And that sucks. I don't like that because I like Devon Vele. And getting traded to the Saints automatically puts you in a place where you are playing behind Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. So he'll be, third-ish look in that offense, but not really because there's Alvin Kamara garnering the stupid amount of targets, right? They utilize tight ends a lot as well. So, but it makes sense why they would want him. I mean, depth in that offense in terms of receiving core. They've had some guys trying to step up, right? And shine a little bit throughout preseason, but I do think that Vele immediately presents a very interesting big target for them. He does have size for them, so I'm sure that was very, very appealing for him. So that's interesting. I just would have liked to see him maybe get the opportunity to compete for that wide receiver 2 spot in Denver there, but that does open things up for potential. We do have Marvin Mims there, but it does open things up potentially for Pat Bryant to push his way through and shine right off the bat there. So that is interesting because you guys know I love Courtland Sutton for sure. And I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that we could, get Evan Ingram getting good volume in that offense. I just haven't liked, obviously, what I've seen over the past couple of years in terms of tight end usage, but you can argue that's because they didn't have the guy that they wanted and that Evan Ingram is the guy that Sean Payton wants. So, I'm hopeful that can happen, but I'm just a little bit, hesitant on that one, but it does seem like this kind of opens things up here. Let's see. Questions in the chat real quick because we've got them popping in here. From 2025 waiver wire picks. Yeah, talking about Sky Moore there. Yeah, it's got Sky Moore has no effect on anybody else in that offense. It's just a body. For us, for depth purposes, it is interesting because it's a body that can potentially be the third look in this offense and maybe even have to be forced to be not third look, third receiver in this offense because you got to consider Kittle and obviously Christian McCaffrey, but third receiver in this offense, which does occasionally provide some value for the 49ers. That was essentially what Jawan Jennings was before everybody got traded and hurt. Occasionally it did pop up and have a little bit of value there. But if relevancy comes if Jawan Jennings cannot be available at the start of the season. So we'll just watch that. And thank you for sharing that with Twitter. Appreciate it. From Tootsie Pop, Rachel, thoughts on Jordan Addison. So with Jordan Addison, actually, specifically, that's one of the ones that I was going to talk about here. I'll actually go ahead and talk about that. He was one of my fallers that I wanted to highlight. Jordan Addison is screaming value for me significantly there. It's crazy to me that he is dropping in ADP. We're seeing a decent little drop here on him. And it's weird because I think people are forgetting that his ADP already had the suspension baked in. So where he was already being drafted, that was we knew the suspension was coming. That was assumed. We knew it was going to be 3 games. There wasn't a mystery there. So from that perspective, I think that we need to take advantage of the fact that Addison's ADP is falling. It's just 3 games. We can deal with it. It's not that big of a deal. I will be drafting him. I got him on a dynasty team. I traded for him on a dynasty team, knowing the suspension was coming because it's 3 games. It's not a big deal, guys. And we're getting a good discount on him. Like for perspective, he was a wide receiver 21 in average fantasy points per game and half PPR last year. That's literally right on par with Jameson Williams, right? When I think of wide receiver 2s that provide you good, strong fantasy upside and can be that consistent low-end wide receiver 2 in terms of fantasy rankings on a weekly basis and actually give you that wide receiver 1 upside pop every now and then because they're in such good offenses. Jameson Williams and Jordan Addison are 2 guys that I group together and comp very similarly. I look at them the same. I want to draft them the same. And the only difference here between the 2 is that Addison is going to miss 3 games. And we know that for sure. We're getting a multi-round discount on him. He should be going next to Jameson Williams. We get literally 2, sometimes 3 rounds of a difference, and it's dropping as we speak here. So that's massive for me. I can deal with Addison being suspended for 3 games. I've talked ad nauseum about JJ McCarthy and how I'm not afraid of that whatsoever. I love him this season. You should not fear any quarterback in Kevin O'Connell's offense. It's quarterback proof. It's just the friendliest environment that you can go into. So volume is still going to be flowing there. Addison is an absolute smash at his ADP. 100% here. Value is super, super good. Let's talk about, actually, while we're on the subject, because we were talking about Sky Moore being traded and, not massive changes for how that's going to be approaching things really in terms of how we're approaching those wide receivers there, just because the only way that Sky Moore was going to have any maybe relevancy was with the suspension incoming for we'll keep on the suspension track here. The suspension incoming for Rashee Rice. Obviously, he is a faller. There's no shock there for him. And falling, he is tumbling because we are in this weird position where I can't remember if I talked about it last week or not. That was a chaotic show. But just to reiterate again, we are in a weird position with him. And I think it was Adam Schefter that came out today and kind of gave us a little bit more insight, which was perfect because it kind of validated exactly how I was planning to approach him. I was always, as we were kind of examining this potential game stretch for his suspension, we were thinking 4 to 6. It sounds like the 6 is definitely the lean there. So we're looking at, and I guess things could get solved ahead of time. That would be ideal, that we get it solved like over the next week and they move up the hearing and they just go ahead and deal with it. But if not, we're looking at a September 30th hearing for him, and would be eligible to play the first 4 weeks and then would have a suspension, assuming the suspension comes immediately right after that hearing. His return timeline would include a bye week. So he would return in week 12. So right as we are prepping for the fantasy playoffs, that is not ideal in any way, shape, or form. But it's unfortunate. And that's, we're going in blind, and that's best case scenario in terms of being able to accurately predict that. Maybe it goes on the lower end and gets like 4 games, maybe 5 again. That would still be still not much of a difference there, right? But basically, we are looking at, if you're drafting him, just be aware you need to consider this. And this is why I think we kind of maybe need a bigger discount on him, even, and the ADP is falling. But I would like even more of a discount because of the inherent risk that we are taking on here, because you will have him for the first 4 games of the season. You will need to be in a winning position in those first 4 games because you are going through the heart of the season without him. You will not have the ability to drop him. You won't want to trade him. People will try to get it to take him at value or at way, 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 way below value, right? If you're in a position where you're struggling and you need bodies, right? You'll be going through bye weeks. He'll be burning a hole on your roster. It's just a bad situation. If you're in a deep league and you can afford, you've got extra bench spots and you can afford to draft and hold, that makes sense. But people in shallow leagues, especially if you're, playing in like your home leagues, they're, 10 team and whatnot, a family league or something, one of those, that one I struggle with. I would not draft him in that, because I can imagine 10 times over in a 10-man league, you will be in a position that you would need to drop him, unfortunately. Yeah. Comments saying it's just something that we're bypassing because it's just such a weird position. But let's jump back. Let's go happy here. And let's go with some of the risers here. And we'll start off with the big riser, the more timely riser here. Sorry, I'm just moving some stuff around here. The more timely riser here in Jacorey Bill, is we're supposed to refer to him, Croskey-Merritt. He was rising, man. Jesus Christ, jumping up ADP right there and jumping up rankings. I raised him in rankings. I raised him appropriately because I do think we need to be cautious with this. I raised him to RB 43. I think that's a little bit conservative. Although in terms of where people are raising him, I look at Fantasy Pros ECR. I don't think you can judge too much based off of that because not everybody is updating their rankings at the same time. So I'm sure that is being dragged a little bit down by people that haven't updated their rankings yet. The highest I could move him right as of this moment, I think, is maybe RB 39, because I don't think that he should go above those kind of like 1B backs that are in situations where they're in extremely heavy run situations, like a Braelon Allen or a Tank Bigsby, who arguably could be the 1A. But we're talking about guys who are being drafted right now as the 1B in their offense. We know that they're going to have, um, should in theory have strong roles within their offense, not technically be handcuffs. They're going to have week to week value and have the opportunity to perform at a high level. So I don't think he should go above guys like that, just because we know the situation for those guys. But I do think he should go above guys like Rachaad White, Ray Davis, right? These are guys that, if they do move forward with getting rid of Brian Robinson, absolutely that would make sense. So right now we're moving him based on the assumption that they are going to move Brian Robinson, right? And in theory, it might not happen. Maybe they end up carrying an extra back. Part of me wonders if they just don't want to drop Chris Rodriguez again. And that's it. Then that's part of the issue there, that they do like him and they're trying to get something out of Robinson, and they feel comfortable with moving on with Croskey-Merritt as the RB1 or lead committee back there. We do have to remember that Austin Ekeler still exists. He's alive. He's still there, and he consumes pass volume. And that's what kind of makes this Washington run game kind of splotchy and inconsistent on a weekly basis, as we saw last season. We can say it was because of poor performances by, or, lack of explosive or whatever you want to put a label on Brian Robinson, and say that it was because of that. But at the end of the day, we get big games from him every now and then because it has to come through volume, right? But there is that factor that kind of caps his upside, and why even before we had any feeling that there was going to be this move, why we were drafting him in RB3 territory despite being a lead back, it's because when you're in an offense where, one, you are a early down, short yardage goal line back, you are not getting that receiving work because there's Austin Ekeler there for that. And then on top of that, you're in an offense with Jaden Daniels, who consumes a lot on the ground as well. It just kind of caps your overall upside. So I do want to be cautious that Croskey-Merritt winning this starting job, if that's presumably what happens here, we probably don't want to ever look at him as more than in terms of drafting a low-end RB2, and that's pushing it, right? We would probably want to have him in the same territory as a high-end RB3, where we were looking at Brian Robinson before, because we realize that there is going to be involvement on the ground from other people. Explosive and big runs and big plays and preseason games against bad defenses are fun. But the reality is that won't happen on a weekly basis. And if you don't have those big chunk yardage plays, you get those unfortunate low upside games because of lack of pass catching upside. Now, maybe they give him some, right, as the season goes on, and they feel comfortable with that. But, we just have to be cautious with that. Another riser here, not surprising, Emeka Egbuka. Obviously, the Chris Godwin situation has to be taken seriously. That was something that all offseason, it made me lean into Emeka, a bit more over ADP and rankings, because Godwin's injury just seemed like it was lingering in a way that maybe they weren't being fully transparent about, right? And so now we're getting this rise on Egbuka, but I think his ADP is still in a very reasonable area. Basically right now, where you're drafting him, he's going in an area where you've got those weird wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 kind of guys with unknown pecking orders, like the San Francisco 49ers receivers of Ricky Pearsall, right? And Juwan Jennings, or the Green Bay receivers of Matthew Golden and Jaden Reed. And then guys with, technically wide receiver 1s, but capped upside there in terms of having, not the exact volume or touchdown opportunities that you would like, and Jakobi Meyers and Khalil Shakir. I think that's a very appropriate spot for him, because at the end of the day, Mike Evans is still the wide receiver 1 of this offense. Emeka brings amazing things to it, but our reliable first look guy that will be turned to, and really the dominant force in the red zone, touchdown factor is always the biggest thing with him. is going to be Mike Evans there. And we also had Jalen McMillan go down with an injury. Unfortunately, I hate to see those neck injuries. So hope it's out for the season. Hopefully it works out for him and he's able to recover. Now, while he wasn't a big factor, it is a good factor for Emeka because he probably wasn't going to just disappear here. So now we know for sure that on a consistent basis, there's a level of snap count that we can expect Egbuka even when Godwin is back to be on the field, right? It does ensure that there is nobody else competing and just siphoning just a teeny tiny bit away from him. It, really gives a little edge to his upside. But I will say this. As Emeka continues to rise, the person who is not rising is Mike Evans, and that's crazy. I recommend drafting Mike Evans like crazy because we are not seeing a jump in his ADP. And I understand that because once you're so high, there is only so high that you can jump. It's easy to make massive jumps in ADP when you're wide receiver 45, right? Because you can bypass over a lot of people real quick. People are hesitant to do that when your ADP is wide receiver 18, because then you got to make significant choices about who you're jumping him over. I am higher than consensus by like 3 spots or so, maybe on Mike Evans, just because, again, he is the big beneficiary here. When we're looking at him, first look in high volume pass offense, high touchdown equity, a stable quarterback situation, and you can draft him in the first round. That's ridiculous. Yes, 32, but there is no sign of regression here. We've talked about that multiple times before. I've talked about Mike Evans. You guys know that I love him. So that's one that the ADP should theoretically rise on him. It's not going to because the room just can't be pushed up. And I advise you lean into him significantly on that one. ADP riser, we talked about Ricky Pearsall. You guys know I love him again. It's rising because, one, that preseason game came out and he just kept getting catch after catch after catch. It's clear, there's still some skeptics out there. Maybe, come see me and I'll win you over on that one because I stand for Ricky Pearsall. But I think everyone is starting to realize that he is the first look in this offense, and the 49ers offense is going to bounce back here, provided we have a full season or, hey, even half, whatever season we can get out of Christian McCaffrey. He's healthy now. That helps the ball move more efficiently as well. Brock Purdy locked in, good to go and healthy. George Kittle healthy. They're going to flow in a much better way than what we saw last year, where things were struggling because of injuries and awkward situations, right? So Pearsall's opportunity in this offense, love it. And eventually we will get Jawan Jennings, Jawan Jennings is injured. We still don't know. I think we're theoretically tracking him to be available for week 1, but yeah, we just got to watch that one for sure. But timeline on Brandon Ayuk, we talked about this before. Week 6 is what we're thinking in theory. That was not the hard exact timeline that was given to us. That's just a general expectation that you can have. It could be longer than that for sure, right? But what we need to consider there with the return eventual of Brandon Ayuk is that when we are looking at Brandon Ayuk and Ricky Pearsall in that offense, we are – I got a barking dog. When we are looking at Brandon Ayuk and Ricky Pearsall in that offense, they play off of each other. They should play off of each other very well. I do think that it is Jawan Jennings that is going to be the one who theoretically gets pushed a little bit by the return of Brandon Ayuk. So when you're looking at that and you're thinking you're leaning towards Jawan Jennings because he had that one massive game, right? And so you're thinking it's a massive ceiling and you want to lean that direction, just be aware that the person who retains their volume is probably going to be Ricky Pearsall in that area once we get a fully healthy 49ers receiving core. Other jumpers in ADP, Jakobi Meyers jumping in ADP makes sense. I mean, the Raiders offense came out, looked competent in preseason, and people are remembering, oh yeah, this guy's pretty good, right? I mean, Brock Bowers is amazing, but Jakobi Meyers is the wide receiver 1 of that offense. Targets will be comparable to Brock Bowers, so he is someone who you would start on a weekly basis. TreVeyon Henderson also jumping up in ADP. This is one that gets me a little bit, guys, because the upside is incredibly high, but it's difficult to ignore the fact that we know Josh McDaniels and his role in the Patriots offense and what it has been responsible in the past when he was responsible for the offensive design and play calling. And it was always a committee. Now, Henderson is certainly a back who is just so incredible that he can force anybody out. But the reality is that we do have to kind of be prepared to see Henderson this season, in some form of a committee here. And it's possible that Henderson can have a bounce back season because while he did look terrible last year, you got to remember he was behind a terrible offensive line. So it's not shocking that that happened there. So I still like TreVeyon Henderson for sure because the upside is high, but just remember that ADP, it's jumping up a little aggressive there, right? We worry that we're slightly overdrafting him. Tank Bigsby is another one that is rising. I don't think his ADP has risen enough. And that's good for us because it puts us in a position where we don't have to worry that we are overdrafting a guy that isn't a committee. And it's a committee for sure. We have zero indication in terms of how this split is going to look. And if you look at Liam Cohen's offense in Tampa Bay, it was Bucky Irving came out on top, but that was a committee. And they did not separate until around week 10 or so in terms of when Bucky just truly shoved his way forward. Prior to that, there were games where Bucky Irving was not getting double-digit carries, right? And, he had high receiving presence as well, but it was factually a committee. He was just the better, more effective back in the committee. So when we're looking at this committee, we have to assume that Travis Etienne is going to have theoretically RB1-ish, right? But not something that we would want to invest in because we're taking the most expensive option in that backfield that is a committee. You don't want to do that. Do we go with the cheapest option of Bashal Tutin? It's interesting, but we don't have any level of indication that he will have a significant role in this committee. The discount that we are getting in terms of ADP on Tank Bigsby is very appropriate. I'm leaning into it on that one. That's the one that I don't mind in terms of guys that we are drafting after, RB3 and later, and thinking there's a realistic shot that they can be start worthy on a weekly basis here. Because the thing that we got to remember about him is that he is, again, he's a true 3-down back. We can't pigeonhole him into an early down and goal line back because he is arguably just as good of a receiver as Travis Etienne, right? And he showcased that this offseason, and he looks like he has earned the trust of being utilized in a wide variety of ways in that offense there. So when we're looking at that kind of committee, we see the rise of Tank Bigsby in ADP. I don't think it's risen to a point where we need to get worried that we can't lean into it. It's still fine. ADP is rising, obviously, for Nick Chubb and Woody Marks. I don't want to speculate on rumors when the sources aren't super clear, but when a team has been as ambiguous as the Texans have been about this injury, read between the lines. I don't have faith that Mixon has longevity this season. Maybe he's available, if he's available for week 1, maybe he's available for week 1. We don't know. I am operating at this point because it's just the situation doesn't look like it's trending in the right direction for me. And if there's one thing that I won't do unless your name is Christian McCaffrey, apparently, I'm not going to draft you if you are dealing with some weird, undefinable, ambiguous timeline injury here as a running back, specifically an older running back on that one. So Mixon's off my draft board. It's not happening. I understand value. If you want to do that, that's fine. Go on. You might be holding on for a while, or maybe you went out. I just don't want a piece of it. Chubb, if Mixon is unable to go, will operate as the lead back. I am operating as though my choices in that offense are Chubb, Dameon Pierce, and Woody Marks. That's it. ADP has not risen a lot on Chubb because, again, this is an older back. He was He was bad last season. We can excuse it though, because I do not judge anyone of any age that comes back mid-season from a massive injury. You didn't have the ramp up time of everybody else. So right off the bat from that injury, running backs just don't look good, period. They don't. So I'm giving him a chance to look better as this season goes on. Dameon Pierce has had multiple chances. Perhaps it can finally work. But if you're not grabbing Chubb, I would be more inclined to grab Woody Marks in later rounds as a dart that might have actual upside because he has actual fresh legs that have not been already relegated to the back by the team. More ADP risers, Braelon Allen. You got to believe it. You got to buy into it. I hate that I had to move Pearsall back a little bit. I'm not moving him back massively because at the end of the day, again, this will be a run heavy offense and the split between them could be fairly even, but the receiving upside does lean towards Hull. I am concerned that we haven't seen significant preseason checkdowns from Justin Fields to Breece Hall. But that just could be the design of the offense and in terms of what they're trying to have Justin Fields focused on during preseason. What you get in preseason is not necessarily what you get when we're in the regular season there. So I wouldn't panic on that because if there was any indication, we would be expecting no receiving upside. And I just don't think that's the case there based off preseason. So Braelon Allen's value is high. I don't think it's too high right now because at the end of the day, their goal is to replicate Detroit in a budget version. Allen's role is for real. We do have to assess the touchdown equity availability with Justin Fields on the field because of his action on the ground. But again, the ADP hasn't risen so much that it makes it too abrasive for me. Some more to go through quickly because we've got some followers to talk about as well. Obviously, Riser, Keenan Allen, welcome home. And this one is going to be a fun one to watch because, again, it's so low. You're taking a late round dart throw and you're just drafting him, putting on your bench to see how it works out. And if they just trust him more than the rookies, that's it. We'll see if we see him on the field. It will more than likely be on the outside, in my opinion, because, again, when we look at the usage of Vlad McConkey in that offense, it's literally a mirror image of Keenan Allen. They both can't do that. And Keenan Allen is more than capable of playing on the outside, right? So I think we'll see him more out there, and he's an interesting bench stash. You guys know that I am not leaning into DeAndre Swift. So ADP rises for Roschon Johnson and Kyle Monangai. I lead into one that is interesting, guys, for obviously, deeper leagues, late round dart throws and whatnot. Torrey Horton is interesting because, again, I don't think he will be fantasy relevant. Maybe that's one that we just kind of keep our eye on, even if you're not drafting him to sit on the end of your bench, depending on the league size there. But we can't deny that Kupp is a big injury risk. So provided Kupp goes down, Horton more than likely steps into a wide receiver 2 role at some point this season. So just keep that in mind. Tyler Warren, obviously, a little bit of a riser here. Just in terms of overall ADP, that makes sense. I was in regardless of who was at quarterback, but Daniel Jones is the better option for Warren specifically. So, okay, yay. Oh, by the way, congratulations to Daniel Jones on your job. I didn't mention that. That was news that we have not talked about since the last podcast. It's interesting. Just, real quick on that. It's not bad for anyone except for AD Mitchell, which is ironic because we did see a nice pass. You get if you're on Twitter and whatnot, you get the nice little highlight reels and whatnot of what's going on in practice. But Daniel Jones can throw the ball deep. I just wouldn't expect it to hit on a consistent basis. And really, obviously, that is something that we were looking forward to seeing with Anthony Richardson and AD Mitchell. Was really having a nice little breakout. I do worry that his average depth of target makes it a little bit apprehensive for Daniel Jones's skill set. I think that it benefits Tyler Warren, Josh Downs, and maybe even Michael Pittman, because he still runs a decent amount of stuff that's still relatively shallow. So really Downs and Tyler Warren are the ones who are really leaning. I don't think Michael Pittman gets hurt. And then I think, unfortunately, it's not super good for AD Mitchell there. Risers, Amari and Hampton, we talked about this before last week. Obviously, we know exactly why that's rising there. Matthew Golden rising, not too much though. I like his ADP right here. I think it is worth the investment. Again, we've got Jane Reed dealing with an injury there. We had our one little preseason stint from Jordan Love, which included just multiple dumb drops by the receivers, all not named Matthew Golden there. So I think naturally the offense is just going to lean that direction because Matthew Golden is the exact receiver that the Packers need and the exact receiver that a quarterback loves. So I think that connection will grow as the season moves forward. And quite frankly, it could happen day one, really. But I do think they will lean aggressively on the ground game early and then just continue to develop the pass game as the season goes on. Tony Pollard's ADP rising. We know why. Injury to Tajay Spears. When he's injured, Tony Pollard is a reliable RB2. That's cool. We're good with that. It's a high ankle sprain. We do have a timeline on that. It's not an ambiguous mystery here. He'll be back. But health has continued to be an issue with Spears. If you can get Pollard at value, you can. I don't like the current ADP area. It's a little wishy-washy for me, where I would rather take the risk of TreVeyon and RJ Harvey. But I'm not opposed to the stability of Pollard. He is a lead back. Now, fallers real quick. We'll do this, and then I'm going to do some mailbag questions. Aaron Jones, obviously a faller. It's 50-50 there with Jordan Mason. Don't argue with me on it. I'm kidding. You can argue with me on it if you want to. You can argue with me anytime. But when we're looking at that backfield, we can't ignore the reality of what's happening there in Minnesota. They specifically brought Jordan Mason in to get more effective production on the ground because the short yardage and goal line stuff for Aaron Jones wasn't working. Okay. So we're going to have Jones primarily in, and it's a role that benefits him the most, right? I'm not knocking Aaron Jones because I'm a Green Bay fan, remember? And I've seen years of good usage of Aaron Jones on the ground, not excessive, right? We don't want him well above 200 carries. You want the bread and butter to come from the receiving game. The problem here is that Minnesota's offense, what we saw in terms of receptions out of Aaron Jones is the max of what you will see. It ain't going to grow. So we're talking about that production last year, and then you can reduce it on down in terms of what he's getting on the ground. That means that logically, he will see a dip in production from what he did last season. The receptions can't grow because there's too much competition. Maybe we see an uptick in the first 3 games when Addison is out, but there is too much competition from the receiving core when it's healthy in terms of Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson, for there to be enough viable production through the air for Aaron Jones to consistently give us upside, right? It'll be disappointing. That is why his ADP is falling. Chris Godwin falling. Obviously, we talked about that with Emeka Egbuka. Skattebo falling in ADP. Not going to lie. I haven't really been behind this one. The Giants' backfield production is going to be limited. If anything, I don't think anyone will, if anyone wins the job outright, I would assume that would be Tyrone Tracy Jr. But otherwise, you're looking at a weird committee in a bad offense and with a horrible, horrible schedule. Not a good combination there. No upside at all. Joe Mixon, we talked about. Darnell Mooney dropping in ADP because his injury situation is ambiguous in terms of we don't have a timeline whatsoever on his return. I don't see this one getting mentioned enough because sadly it could bring us back on to Kyle Pitts, really. But late round guys, look at Ray McLeod. Reliable veteran receiver. Obviously, I endorse him. Let me lean the right direction on my Clemson stuff. Obviously, endorsed by Tera. and they like him in Atlanta. And he's popped up from time to time when he has been needed here in deep leagues with Darnell Mooney out. I do think that he can have some interesting potential low end flex appeal there. Atlanta's pass volume, we got to remember, Atlanta had high pass volume last season. They just did nothing with it because Kirk Cousins was inefficient and turning the ball over a lot. All Michael Penix has to do is not turn the ball over, and the receivers will thrive from this. We talked about Jordan Addison. Kaleb Johnson's ADP is dropping. Guys, this is what it should have been. It was raised up too high. It's dropping back to what it naturally should have been. We have zero indication from the Steelers that Johnson will be a lead back. Zero indication. We should not be drafting him as such. The possibility obviously exists that he can outperform Warren as the season goes on. That's cool. But the ADP of him and where it was not of a player that we can hope to earn his way in there. You were drafting him to be your RB2, and he might not give you RB2 value to start off the season. The difference between speculating on the roles for a guy like RJ Harvey and TreVeyon Henderson is that those guys can outperform their ADP in a split backfield because their contribution can come through the air. That would not be the case for Johnson. Not saying he's got brick hands or anything like that. I'm saying that when you look at the primary way that the offense would want to utilize him, it would be the reverse situation for him. So we also got to remember that goal line opportunities are a bit capped in an Aaron Rodgers offense because he enjoys throwing the ball at the goal line. Arthur Smith, we got to factor that in here in terms of not giving significant volume all the time to rookies on the ground. Again, it's a sketchy situation, right? Because we want to draft him before guys like Brian Robinson and Tyrone Tracy, Quinshon Judkins, Travis Etienne, Javonte Williams. Naturally, you want to lean into somebody who actually has upside, and none of those guys have the true upside that you would like to have. But just be aware that if you're drafting him in that position above those guys, you are drafting him in a position where you probably should not be relying on him as an RB3. This would be if you went, RB2. This would be if you went a robust RB3 and you're drafting him as, let me slow down. If you went robust RB in terms of your draft strategy and you are drafting him to keep him as an RB3 on your bench there. Again, I talk about this with rookies all the time. Just know what you're drafting. You can draft any rookie at any place. Just know what you're drafting there. Other fallers, we talked about Breece Hall, Tajay Spears, we talked about as well. Jaden Reed, we talked about as well. These are all guys that are following with the risers on the opposing side there. Let's do some mailbag questions that I missed out on last week. From Jeremy, from Reddit Fantasy Football account on Twitter at Reddit_FF, asked a wide variety of questions. A lot of excellent questions here. And this first one is pick one player for each. Best value, and this is the first one. Best value in double-digit rounds. So technically speaking, it's JJ McCarthy for me, but that's cheating. I feel like that's cheating to say a quarterback with one QB. In theory. So I will go with another option of saying Matthew Golden is the only player that when I'm looking at double digit rounds has true legitimate wide receiver one upside here. Again, the Packers desperately have to find someone that can handle volume, be reliable in terms of their routes, and then actually catch the ball and not drop it. And boom, Matthew Golden gives us all those things. Matt LaFleur has not been afraid in recent years to immediately put strong usage on rookies, wide receivers. He's not one that kind of makes you have to earn your way in. So I can realistically see where Matthew Golden steps up immediately and gets the bulk of the target share in there. That's a high aspiration, right? But it's a reality of something that really could happen. Second question was cooked, but ADP doesn't show it. This one for me, obviously, cheating would be saying Joe Mixon. But this one was for me was Aaron Jones, and the ADP has moved back a little bit. This was a question from last week, and over the past week, the ADP has fallen back a little bit, but still, it's not enough for me. Again, when you look at Aaron Jones' production last season, despite the fact that Jones was never really like a significant goal line back at the Packers. He was effective, right? When utilized in that way. He was wildly ineffective at the goal line last year. I do not think we will see him utilized on the ground at the goal line. He had limited touchdown opportunities to begin with last year on the ground. Receiving touchdowns are just not something that are super prevalent in Kevin O'Connell's offense. So that one right there concerns me. And we saw visible regression on him last year. I'm sorry, guys. And granted, once they kind of got to the edge or end of the season, playoff time, he did start to pop, right, in terms of being a little bit more productive. But at the end of the day, I don't have faith that at his age, we're going to see that continued usage. And we have to remember last year was the highest volume of his entire career. I don't know why Minnesota did that. I know they like him. I like him too. But that's a little sketchy. And we always advise when someone comes off a significant increase in volume for them that you kind of look the other way and say, I don't know about that, especially when they're 30 years old. That seems a bit problematic. The next one was simply vibes are off. Will not draft at ADP. Sadly for me, this one is Sam Laporta. I got a bad feeling there. And it's not just vibes. Like I can back this up with a lot of data there in terms of why I do not want to draft him, especially when you consider the players that he's being drafted around. That's a bad area to draft a tight end. Don't do it. Don't do it. Please bypass it because you can get that same production out of a Tucker Kraft and a Tyler Warren. Heck, maybe I'm even coming around to Colston Loveland a little bit as well if they're going to be running 2 tight end sets there in Chicago. But I can go any direction. Hell, I will go back to Brenton Strange, man. The value that you were getting for where you were drafting him, it doesn't make sense, unfortunately. And we're talking about the vibes being off. The vibes I'm getting is that they love Isaac Tesla. And they have been desperately looking for a wide receiver 3 in Detroit. There is no mystery about it. They've been trying. They've been desperately trying to buy or to find a third option that would work for them. And Tesla is that dude. I'm buying the hype. I believe it. I do think this is a guy that just screams Dan Campbell and a guy that he will put immediately on the field. That's the vibes that I'm getting right there. Then they're not good. And the person that hurts the worst, unfortunately, is moving Sam Laporta down in the pecking order in terms of more lack of consistency in volume and being more touchdown dependent, unfortunately, there. We also got, Gibbs stepping up more. It's just like, things sound good out of Detroit as a whole. Like I'm feeling good about it, but not for Laporta, unfortunately. And then one more question. Player I would like to leave every draft with that is a non-first rounder. You guys know that's Cortland Sutton. I love him. That's my boy. Next question is, what in your opinion is the most common mistake fantasy players are making these days? I would say that the most common mistake is ignoring draft value because they said they were fading a player. There are certain times where it is warranted to fade a player because of a very sketchy situation, like the Joe Mixon injury. He's removed from my draft board just because I don't have the faith that he is going to play a significant amount of time in this season. But I tend to operate in terms of I will take a player at value, even if it's a player that I'm not particularly a fan of, because as value continues to slide on certain players, at some point, the player that you are fading is coming in a significant value where it's worth it. So there's a degree to which you say I'm fading such and such, but there are certain people that remove way too many players off their board, and I will never draft him. And then there's a point at which you need to draft somebody. There's only so much that you can bypass value there. I swore up and down I was not drafting Tony Pollard last year. Swore up and down. And the value just kept falling. And I took him in a couple of spots and it worked out. The value that you were getting him for, it just paid off. So you can say that you're fading someone, but always be in the mindset of being flexible and being okay to change it. I remember there was one time, like one year where the year that Michael Pittman actually had a decent year and everyone had faded him saying like, we're not doing this. We're not doing this. And he was being danced around in ADP like crazy. And the value just came through unbelievably. Moving on to the next question here. If you could start, this is a fun one. If you could start an 8-person league with one NFL player and 6 other fantasy analysts, who are you inviting? So I love fun questions. If you guys have like fun questions to ask me, always drop these, please. So I've worked with a lot of companies, right? So, and I've had the pleasure of being in several industry leagues. So I will show some bias here. I really do love my fantasy alarm and football diehards people. I do. I love everybody that I work with, right? But I maybe love them a little extra. Bob Harris, Mike Dempsey, Howard Bender, Andrew Cooper. Those are the ones that I would definitely pull into the league. And then I've been doing the local Houston draft for the Scott Fish Bowl for the past couple of years. So I would include one of my local Houston guys, Tip Major from Football Guys. And then I would also include Cooter Doodle from Fantasy Life to round it out because I feel like the vibes would just be very high in this group. So that's my group that I would in terms of 6 fantasy analysts. And then for the NFL player, this shouldn't be shocking. I'm bringing in Jordan Love. Clearly. Yes, my fandom. But also, I love Jordan Love's wife, Ronica Stone. She's awesome. So he would have to bring her as well, and they can be a duo and manage the team together. I'm obsessed with them. They're so cute. I don't even follow Jordan on social. I only follow his wife, Ronica, because they're just so cool. She's cooler than him. Next question. Nabers isn't, this one was from last week. But at the time, Nabers wasn't practicing. Dable wasn't answering questions. He is practicing now. How much should we be worried? I don't think we should be super worried. We just pay attention to it. I did not downgrade him. I'm not downgrading him at all. Honestly, the pass volume potential is just so insane for him. I am willing to forego worrying about a toe or a back or anything at all because it is Malik Nabers here. I've said this before and I'll say it again here. We're underestimating the situation no, we're not, because I mean, he's high in ADP, so no one's underestimating anything, but I don't think there's a bad scenario here. They're going to be in struggle games, playing from behind. They have to push volume. They cannot rely on that ground game. I talked about it. There's no prolific ground game for them to lean on here. They are going to have to throw a little bit more than ideal. And top to bottom in that quarterback room, Russ is a fine option, right? If and when, at some point we will see Jackson Dart. Whenever we see him, Dart has looked every bit of what we could have hoped, right? In terms of competent and running the offense well, immaculate deep balls, good I feel positive about it, and that we should not have any struggles out of Malik Nabers with that. And then in the event that we get down to Jameis Winston, that was my ideal scenario anyway. So joke's on you. If we ever get to that point, it's random fantasy points there from Malik Nabers. So there's not a bad scenario here. I'm in. Question from John CT 70 on Twitter. Keep Daniels, Christian McCaffrey, Bowers, full PPR. I picked 7th of 8. Oddly enough, I would keep CMC there. If you keep CMC, you could actually take another back with the 7th and then have 2 locked in RB1s. So you would be able to do that, still get solid wide receiver value with your second pick. So, or, you can flip it either way, but regardless, you're able to lock in two clear RB1s there. So I would keep McCaffrey there. From Casey Coleman, I am super high on Chase Brown. He reminds me of Eckler when he got his shot after Melvin left for the Chargers. Do you think I'm too high on him? No, absolutely not. I don't think you can be too high on him. I love Chase Brown. Often I feel like people try to downgrade and find excuses for day 3 running backs in their second year, trying to find a reason that they'll lose a job, clawing at, grasping at straws and whatnot, trying to figure out how they can downgrade him. It's Brown's job. He is the back. No one is going to steal it. I guess that's a pretty definitive statement to make, but it is what it is. They love him here. You don't go from being a back that they're putting on the field 90% of snaps to all of a sudden losing your job to another day 3 running back when you have had the level of production that he has and the reliability. You have versatility over the board. You're excellent. You're solid on the ground. You were excellent as a receiver, and not just a guy that is checking down. You were versatile from a receiving perspective there, and a high-powered offense that hopefully when you're listening to the podcast, the Bengals will have figured things out with Trey Hendrickson, because if they don't, Chase Brown could be the overall RB1, because they're just going to have to be scoring a solid 50 points a game, because that defense is not stopping anybody if he's gone. My God. Hopefully they figure, no, hopefully not. Let's root for chaos and just the most extreme, because I'm invested in Chase Brown. So let's root for chaos and the most ridiculous amount of fantasy point opportunities there for the Bengals. You will not be able to draft any of them high enough. From Justin Sonier. How do you think the Steelers' backfield will shake out after their first preseason game? Kaleb Johnson did not look to be part of the starting running back rotation. So when it comes to rookies in preseason games, I will say that I don't take a lot of stock into how they are used, how long they play, what teams they are playing with, because just from what I've seen, the tendency there with rookie running backs and veteran running backs get the edge of not having to play. Rookie running backs, they want to get out there, because unlike, I think theoretically, and I think the same kind of tends for receivers, but I think it's more emphasized with running backs, because their assignments are so critical for pass protection. I do think that we have a tendency to see rookie running backs going out there in situations where they're not with the first team, because you're sitting your starter, right? But you need this running back. He has to get these reps in and live. You're not going to want to send him out there cold on his assignments in week 1, right? So I don't take a ton of stock into usage of rookie running backs in preseason, because they are being used in whatever ways they need to have to get reps. So I'm not super worried about that. What I will say is that I do think that we need to take into consideration, again, I talked about it earlier, but I don't think he's the lead back right now. I think he can earn it. I think we've had enough general rumors out of, reporters out of Pittsburgh, just to kind of generally piece together that they are not prepared to make him the outright lead back. He can earn it because he's talented enough, for sure, man, as the season goes on. But we need to approach it knowing that you cannot draft him to be in your starting lineup right now. Just that's my opinion. I would love to be wrong. I can be wrong for sure, but this is something that if you draft it, and I'm not saying avoid it, he's not on my do not draft list, he's not on my fades, but it's a draft with consideration that this might not be a guy that you can rely on in your starting lineup in week 1. Draft him for your bench. But that wraps things up, guys. I appreciate you all tuning in. Good questions, good vibes as well. Again, actually just, a few housekeeping items for those of you that are hanging around here. On the podcast last time, someone mentioned that it would be cool if I had a calendar so you guys could know what shows I had coming up and schedules. I did that. I took your advice. I went and I found something. So in my link tree now, the second link in there is a calendar that will show all of my live events. I have not pre-populated it weeks out because I don't know, that's a lot of work. I'll get to working on it, but I do have it, and it'll be in there, and it'll have nice little graphics. It'll show the days and links to shows for everything that I've got going on here. And that'll be good because we have a ton of stuff coming up, guys. I will obviously be doing the podcast throughout the entire season, right? But in addition to that, I will be doing lives on social, right? On my socials, on socials for Fantasy Pros as well. I'll have articles coming out, videos. I have also, I'd appreciate it if you could head over to my YouTube channel. I have finally committed, guys. I have finally committed to making long form videos over there. I've got some up now. I'm getting into rhythm because I'm not an editing person. Like I'm a talker, right? I think you guys could see that. And not a, graphics and editing and media I can learn. I'm smart. But I finally committed to actually figuring out a way to effectively be able to create videos in a timely manner. And I am committing, I promise I'm going to be keeping content coming on my YouTube channel. And it's good because I've got a lot of positive feedback there. So if you could head over to my YouTube channel and subscribe over there too. It's Tera Time. That would be amazing because I'm getting a lot of good traction over there, and there's some videos up there, of course, of ADP guys that I'm fading, guys that I'm leaning into, steals and whatnot, quarterbacks. So I've got those up. So I'll be pumping out that content as well. And then I'll also be doing betting and DFS stuff too. So I don't know if we'll have time to talk about this on that stuff on this podcast, but I'll definitely have it across all of my other channels as well. So it's going to be a fun season. Make sure that you are following me across all social media platforms, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere. And also make sure that you are subscribed to Player Profiler as well. I think I'm about to lose my voice. Thank you for tuning in, guys. We got more preseason games. Enjoy the week. We are inching closer to the season. I know you've got drafts. So if you have any questions, like you're drafting and whatnot, tag me. Obviously, quickest way to reach me would be on Twitter and whatnot. But, just drop me a question anywhere. Other than that, I will talk to you all next week. We made it through a show without any any thunderstorms, so that was cool. Thank you all for tuning in. Talk to you again next week.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.